Good evening. Today we'll talk about codes of ethics. In the past, we referred to codes of ethics several times when we discussed the definitions for work ethic, business ethic, or even when we talked about the roles and responsibilities of the engineering profession. And we said when engineer acts as a consultant, competitive bidding is something that an engineer should not involve himself or herself in because that would be against the code of ethics for his profession, for the profession of engineering. And we said, we discussed about collective bargaining. When we talked about collective bargaining, we actually quoted lines from the Code of Ethics for National Society of Professional Engineers, USA. And when we talked about the top 10 mistakes that CEOs do in terms of ethics or in terms of ethical leadership, we mentioned that Code of Ethics and non-compliance to Code of Ethics will be like somewhere on the top. And we also said that engineers are social experimenters, and for them to be responsible social experimenters, one of the important aspects for consideration would be to constantly check if they are actually violating the code of ethics for their organization or for their profession or for the particular professional society they belong to. And when we defined professionalism, we said there should be three characters for a professional, and self-regulation was one of the important ones. There we said self-regulation will include compliance to the code of ethics and abiding by the code of ethics. So Wikipedia lists ethical code or code of ethics as something that is adopted by organizations to assist members in understanding the difference between right and wrong and in applying that understanding to their decisions. So remember, it's not just a code, a piece of code of ethics, and you just have a document and you leave it there. It's actually supposed to be a guiding light to understand the difference between right and wrong and to actually understand and apply that understanding to decisions that they take in terms of the business. So this is why we have code of ethics. But remember, there can be multiple codes of ethics. There could be a code of ethics for the organization, there could be a code of ethics for the profession of engineering, and there could be a code of ethics for the professional societies that you are a part of. And remember that none of these codes of ethics must violate any applicable laws or guidelines of regulatory authorities, including governments, safety organizations, and so on. So code of ethics does not replace everything else, but it actually complements all the laws, guidelines, and so on in order to provide a particular path for an engineer or a professional to be ethical and moral and correct. So here you see the link to Wikipedia ethical code, which actually lists more if you're interested in it. And we'll talk about code of ethics and code of conduct. We mentioned about code of conduct a few times, but we did not really make a difference between code of ethics and code of conduct. They're actually two different things. There is a subtle difference that we'll look into now. Code of ethics is usually a public document which is typically uploaded to the organization website, and it should be available in the organization library or something. And it will be a public document that tells how the organization values ethics and how they demonstrate it in their day-to-day business. Essentially, a code of ethics is focused on principles that are accepted in the society, and based on that, a code of ethics is prepared and an organization follows it. On the other hand, code of conduct is usually an internal document for employees. It may or may not be available for the public, but it details how employees must conduct themselves in their day-to-day business without actually causing harm or loss to the organization. So essentially, code of conduct is generally focused on rules and compliance. And here we must understand that codes of conduct cannot actually violate all the regulatory, safety, compliance, and legal practices, but that they cannot also go beyond the code of ethics itself. So all these must be honored. So code of conduct is an additional thing above the code of ethics, which is based on rules and compliance, like what to do and what not to do within the scope of all this. Here, as an example, we look into the IEEE code of ethics and code of conduct so that we can make the difference between the two. And here, this I take from the IEEE webpage that's listed here for IEEE ethics and members conduct. So there they say, through its ethics and member conduct committee, IEEE aims to foster awareness on ethical issues, to promote ethical behavior among those working within IEEE fields of interest, and to create a world in which engineers and scientists are respected for exemplary ethical behavior. Remember, what IEEE says here actually is not limited to IEEE itself. Though the second point does say IEEE fields of interest, it's not exactly IEEE itself. It's about only a field that IEEE is working in. So this is focused on the principles that govern the society. Anyway, we'll look into these two links here. I have them open already. So we have the IEEE ethics and member conduct. This is what I read to you just now. And here is the IEEE code of ethics. The link is found on that page. And here you see 10 different points under the code of ethics for IEEE. It says, we the members of IEEE in recognition of blah 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 blah, and it says, we'll quickly look into some of a few of the points here. To accept responsibility in making decisions, to avoid real or perceived conflicts of interest, to be honest and realistic, to reject bribery, and so on and so forth. So these are all principles that govern the code of ethics, that define the code of ethics for IEEE members. On the other hand, let's look into the code of conduct of IEEE. Here it says, be respectful of others, treat people fairly, avoid injuring others or property or reputation or employment, refrain from retaliation, and so on and so forth. As you can see, this is a list of things that you should be doing towards others as members. On the other hand, this is actually principles that govern the whole society. So there you can understand the difference between the two, I believe. And there can be other codes for various other organizations. There will be more samples that will be uploaded for your perusal. I have several of them. I can upload them to your drive and you can look into them later. And for the class, we'll discuss on the following issues later. So, two questions that I want you to ponder over. Do you see any major differences in the codes of ethics for IEEE, Institute of Engineers India, and IETE? And we'll also look into, eventually, not in the same class probably, but eventually we'll look into a question, a practical scenario as to what you would do if your employer directs you to do something that goes against the code of ethics for your professional society. List out all possible courses of action and devise your ultimate plan of action. Here you can go back and refer to the various morals and ethics theories that we discussed so that you can devise what you should be doing. And with that, we'll end this lecture on codes of ethics.